Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Man at YouTube with another model video. Building the Mack knife from Reconguista No G. A very recent release and a fairly affordable and basic kit. It also has a colour changed P-Bandai alternative with a slightly different head. More on that a bit later. The kit contains 9 runners, including polycaps and a action base, a small set of stickers, and fairly detailed instructions covering every body component. A large colour guide showing all sorts of poses and shots from the show, information, and paint colour guide in Mr. Hobby colours. The runners are pre-coloured and snap fit in a mixture of PLA and ABS. The ABS has very fine gates, easy to snap off, though tools are required. We're just heading in that direction. A product like this would be more suitable as a toy or for beginners. With basic tools and reasonably nice nippers, a whole range of sandpaper, the attempt for the build will be to achieve an out-of-the-box look, though neat enough that all seams, nubs, flash marks will be removed. This is a fairly modern kit and it's moulded in a way that minimal faults will be visible. Plastic cement is not required, but to fill all of those seams I will be utilising it, drying it and sanding back. There will be some seams that will require a touch of putty for a flash flat look. The difference between the P-Bandai and regular head is just the extra fins on the side of the head and the colouring. I'm just going to glue the faceplate in and keep it as is, as the design is quite nice, and I've already gone to quite a bit of effort to make it work. Going down to the torso assembly, the two front halves of the torso has had the seam widened open to show that the chest plate separates at those points, and the lower hips, where a bit of armour covers the codpiece, are glued in its segmented pieces for easy painting later on. There's quite a few very fine parts on this project. You can see where the putty's been applied across the arms already. Lots of gimmicks, very articulated. You can probably fold it out and open it up again, though in the way of obvious injection moulding faults, it's fairly free and clean of that. Colour separation good and parts are not trapped underneath each other. The polycaps easily pop in and out, not a lot of hassle. With a pin vise and micro drill, I did drill out the vent or gun holes at the lower inner leg and trimmed some connecting parts for the leg upper hip joint and opened up the ring to a C-joint for the lower heel that pops in and out. This makes it separatable to paint each individual component. Where parts of the same colour are glued together, in my typical style, the snap joints and connectors were loosened to allow for ease in post-painting assembly. I do utilise PVA glue after painting in keeping the model together permanently. Snap build would be incredibly quick. It is a petite and tiny robot, mediocre detail. The design does not resemble or look like a Gundam. It is refreshing and interesting, but I do hate the colour scheme and found the P-Bandai or the mass production version with the yellow far more interesting, which I wish to reproduce. With my workbench away from the studio and some very old acrylics, we started painting by mounting each of the parts on bamboo skewers or alligator pegs. Each of the plastic surfaces did have a very light sandpaper buff to roughen up the surface, though automotive primer, heavily thinned down, was applied with the APR 150 cordless battery powered airbrush. As the reference material I did require does not exist on the box art or the instructions, I needed to utilize Google in looking up the actual animation footage and the box references to the P-Bandai kit in where to paint and how to detail the mass production version and colour match the paint with the very old Tamiya and Gun's acrylic I had. Each of the paints was thinned down 50-50 with lacquer thinner and applied at a very low PSI, shading multiple tones to give definition and a gradient light shade effect. I was very playful with the metallics, leaning in a base of metallic black and building up gunmetal to silver shading and the inner frame burnt iron for various tones of metallic just out of sheer interest, giving the whole lot a sludge wash to bring out detail. The metallic bits were top coated with heavily thinned down floor polish for a very light gloss sheen. Each of the armor components had separate paints selected, mounted, sprayed a base coat, and then built up shades of lighter tones. Some of these paints are up to a decade to a decade and a half old and required hot water to loosen the caps for them to be easily open. The Tamiya paints in the Japanese jars are very well designed and retained its shelf life for a very long time. Afterwards, I thoroughly cleaned the APR airbrush, as it's renowned for clogging with acrylics and being more difficult to use. This was a slower process, but still finished it fairly quickly. Everything was given a matte coat, Mr. Hobby rough matte base, and weathering applied in pigment form and weathering pencil to give a further edge. Alcohol acrylic paint is quick to dry but very long and difficult to chemically harden and cure fully. I allowed a few days for this process to occur before assembling with PVA glue into sub-components and then attached it all together at its articulation points for its permanent finish model. As this is not a freestanding model, I used an aftermarket base to have this in suspension in the air for various poses rather than that fairly ugly black base. With multiple coats of a very lightly dusted on lacquer matte coat, the whole project is finished with the correct sheens on each of the components and left me with a finished model in the desirable scheme. Very happy how this popped out, and it was a very fun and easygoing project with a bunch of opportunities for poses, articulation and gimmicks that you'd be able to utilize to replicate scenes from the show or build up a greater and larger diorama. Swapping the colors out to achieve the P-Bandai scheme was not difficult at all, making the price and scarcity of that model a bit of a farce. At my own liberty, being a space machine, I didn't like the very light grey and white and stuck to a medium grey and more of a cream that would blend into all sorts of outer space schemes as more camouflage, with the yellow being some sort of warning and reflective surface to prevent collision with other space vehicles. Very light weathering, as the machine has not seen a lot of combat in the peaceful times of the show and the expense of such an elite machine. From unboxing to top coat, this project only has taken me a week under lockdown and extensive free time. Had a lot of fun. Very pleased how this popped out, and it was a very good mental build in between far more complex and difficult projects. From comments received, I do not believe this model is widely available anymore and out of production, though we could see a return to a second line sometime in the future with the popularity of the show post its flop airing. The design seems very popular with all sorts of science fiction fans and viewers of other mecha or video game properties. This would easily be converted into all sorts of other machines and robots across many different franchises. I highly recommend it as a base easy model to work with to foresee any future projects and ideas you would have with it, or even build it out of the box if you like how it stands. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, stay tuned for further content. Check the links down below for reference material and links to social media where I work on other projects and put out news in the general direction and projects of the channel. We'll catch you guys next time. See you later.